What's the most NSFW thing you've seen in your school? Story 1. Back in college during a mock math test, our lecturer accidentally left her laptop connected to the projector. For a good 5 minutes, the entire class sat there in the stunned silence as she openly Googled about spontaneous vaginal discharge. It wasn't until she glanced up and saw everyone's horrified expressions that she realized what had happened. Story 2. Back in high school, there was a guy getting frisky with his girlfriend near the ravine just outside our school. They probably thought they were being discreet since it was a forested area. But from the vantage point of our third-floor physics classroom, we had a pretty clear view between the trees. One guy in class noticed it and pointed it out. Within seconds, the entire class, teacher included, had crowded around the windows to see what was going on. It was a mix of shock, hilarity, and disbelief. Story 3. I went to art school, saw a performance piece by a fellow student. She striped naked, sat down and pulled an American flag out of her nether regions. Story 4. When my professor accidentally shared his screen during a Zoom lecture, and it was just a tab open to best ways to pleasure a woman. Talk about a lesson we'll never forget. Story 5. During my senior year of high school, I took an elective class on forensic science. The class was taught by a retired cop who, looking back, was one of the kindest and most genuine teachers I've ever had. Sadly, he's since passed away. That said, his teaching style was unorthodox. He didn't believe in sugarcoating the harsh realities of crime and prison, which meant he sometimes shared material that, in hindsight, was wildly inappropriate for high school students. One video in particular sticks with me to this day. It was security footage from a prison, showing an inmate being stabbed over 80 times. I remember being horrified, not just by the violence, but by how much blood there was. It didn't seem possible for a human body to hold that much. The teacher used the video to emphasize the dangers of knives compared to guns. And if watching it once wasn't enough, he made us watch it a second time. I felt physically sick afterward and couldn't sleep well for days. Looking back, I highly doubt the school administration had any idea he was showing us this kind of content. The class was mostly filled with the school's delinquents and don't give a fight crowd, and they adored him. They would never have reported him. In fact, he often had former students, years after graduating, drop by during class to ask for legal advice or help with their troubles. He'd do anything to support them. It was just the kind of person he was. As for me, I was a pretty sheltered AP honors kid who only took the class to fill an extra slot in my schedule. That year was an eye-opener. Despite the questionable teaching methods, I learned more real-life lessons in that class than in any other I'd ever taken. Story 6. I was a member of the high school marching band for a year. The bus rides back and forth to games on Friday nights were rolling vessels of teen exploration. Gave me a new perspective on band geeks. They may not have been the coolest, but they were getting more action than most of the football team. Story 7. In health class, our teacher was a devoutly Christian woman who clearly found the topic of sex ed challenging. She blushed her way through the entire unit, clearly uncomfortable, which made the awkwardness almost contagious. Things reached a whole new level during the childbirth lesson. As part of the class, we were shown a video of an actual birth. It was already a lot to take in. The baby exploding out of the mother's body, the fluids, the chaos. About 60 seconds into this scene of natural destruction, our teacher exclaimed, "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph!" Okay, that's certainly enough, and reached for the remote to stop the video. Only she didn't hit stop. Instead, she accidentally hit rewind. And not the normal kind of rewind. She pressed it while the video was still playing. What we witnessed next can only be described as pure nightmare fuel. The baby, now in 2x speed, reverse launched back up into the mother's body as if being sucked into a black hole. The entire class collectively lost their minds. Every student screamed. Every girl in the room instinctively slammed their legs shut, visibly traumatized. I can't say for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if most of us left that classroom a little less enthusiastic about the idea of parenthood. Story 8. Back when I was a high school senior, I visited my future university during rush week to check out the campus scene. Naturally, I ended up at a party at my dad's old fraternity. The setup was pretty wild. A long glass wall separated the main room, where a foam dance party was going full tilt, from an outside courtyard where people were drinking beer and socializing. The foam made visibility inside almost non-existent, which seemed to be part of the appeal. It was chaos in there. At one point, I was hanging out in the courtyard when something caught my eye. Out of nowhere, a girl's bare ass appeared pressed right up against the glass. She had hiked up her skirt and was fully going at it with some guy, propped against the glass like it was their personal stage. From the looks of it, she probably thought the foam inside was hiding her, but the outside crowd had crystal clear visibility. She unknowingly put on an unforgettable and very public display for everyone outside. It was definitely an introduction to college life I won't forget anytime soon. Story 9. Back in college during a lecture, I decided to step out for a quick restroom break. I wasn't paying much attention as I walked in, just pushed the door open and went about my business. Or so I thought. The moment I stepped inside, I froze. Right there in front of me, a girl was perched on the windowsill with her legs spread, while another girl was, let's just say, deeply engaged in some very private activities. I was completely stunned. My brain short-circuited for a second, and all I could manage was a mumbled, "Oh, sorry," before turning right around and walking back out. At the time, I was absolutely floored, but looking back now, I can't help but laugh. It's hands down the most unforgettable restroom detour of my college years. Story 10. Guy dropped bottle of highly concentrated sulfuric acid in the middle of the lab. Story 11. In high school, they would bring in the local reservist unit for first aid demonstrations, and we'd spend a day learning the basics. One year, the unit had just returned from a deployment in Afghanistan, so instead of the usual, we got to hear real stories and learn how to triage injuries from IEDs, shock and gunshots. It was definitely a lot more interesting and intense than the usual, "What if Timmy sprained his ankle playing football?" lesson. Story 12. Me and my buddies walked in on a girl getting spit roasted. Lights were on and everything. Wild times. Story 13. I was at a bar with a group of friends when one of the girls decided to jump on the table and give me a table dance naked. Surprisingly, she didn't get kicked out because she had the whole bar staring at us. Story 14. Dude straight watching porn on the school computer in the lounge area. Story 15. So I transferred from a small private school to a slightly larger one and went back to visit my old school, which felt way smaller than I remembered. I ended up going to a party, got absolutely hammered, and crashed on my friend's couch. Now his roommate, who's now this black survivalist Trumper guy who thinks women should be subservient, quite the fall from grace considering he used to be one of the most chill, popular guys on our D1 football team, didn't realize I was asleep on the couch and didn't see me. Around 8 a.m., he enters the room with a girl whose voice I recognized, but I couldn't place. They proceed to get very intimate, with him making her gargle mouthwash and spit it on the floor. Then he proudly shows off his abs and asks, "Have you ever had sex on abs like these?" before telling her to open her mouth. I tried so hard to hold in my laughter, but before I could even let them know I was there, she starts blowing him. It gets weirder. She tells him she's on her period, and he responds, "That's okay. I like to taste a woman." I'm literally holding in my gag reflex at this point, especially when he insists she take out her tampon and misses the wastebasket. It's then that he goes down on her, and I nearly lose my lunch. The door to my friend's bedroom was open, so the roommate gets up and shuts it. He asks, "How much did you hear?" And my buddy, who had been in the room, replies, "Too much." The roommate then retreats to the couch and sees me shouting, "What the fuck is Slim Shady doing on our couch?" I was going through a bleach blonde, buzzed phase. The girl, realizing it was me, screams, "Fuck, I thought he transferred," and bolts, naked, bleeding, and drunk. I didn't even get a look at her face, though. I eventually left and told my friends about what happened. The mouthwash on the floor, the tampon, all of it. But the identity of the girl remained a mystery. The year before, there was a girl I used to call Bored Betty because her go-to line at parties was, "I'm bored," as if that would make me want to sleep with her. Just so you know, I'm gay, so I was never interested in her. On the last day of my visit, I'm walking to the car with my friend Michelle to head to the airport when she tells me not to look left. So of course I look left, and there she is, bored Betty. She walks up to me and asks, "How did you sleep on Friday?" I immediately think, did this girl just accidentally out herself as the one from the bloody weird scene I witnessed? A few years later, I ran into her again at a major airport. She looked the same, but had gained some weight. I said hi, thinking enough time had passed, and that we were in a busy enough area it wouldn't be weird. Out of nowhere, she says, "Remember that time you visited sophomore year after you transferred?" And I swear, I came so close to vomiting all over again. Now, if you like stories like these, please make sure to like and subscribe for more. If you have any opinions on these stories, let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you all enjoyed today's story time, and I hope to hear from you all soon.